Hi. Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
All right. I'm sorry. I forget who is, chairing and minuting. I'm sorry. Didn't have it in front of me.
I am taking minutes today. I forgot who's the host. UCL is the host, and I'm taking.
Oh, no. Okay. Sure we can manage that. Here, Center, apologies.
Wilson and Mickey also will not join. I expect Ma, but the other two will not join.
Yeah.
All righty. All righty. Well, if you are ready to note take home.
Yep.
And if we're not expecting that many other people, then I guess we can get started. I will just hang on a second. I was tasked with this ISNTD event, and I'm pretty sure that that I have now passed that over to the relevant people who are now talking. So about 2 weeks ago, the head person at ISNTD was having a phone call with some people from DNDI, and they were arranging, they were going to arrange an event where we were going to talk about mycetoma and mycetosis. So it's kind of slightly off my plate, but I will chase it to check that it's happened. So you can put that as an action item on me. I'll chase it to see what's going on. Essentially, DNDI have kindly volunteered to help with the organization, which is great. And they're talking to ISNTD, but I don't know if that conversation's progressed anywhere. So you can action me to check in on how that process is going. That's the extent of my update, I'm afraid.
Okay, no problems.
Okay.
Yeah, with regards to meetings, yesterday I heard from Ed Zelstra from DNDI that there will be a mycetoma session at ASTMH, which was awarded, but he didn't send me the details yet.
That's good. Great. Is that in November?
Yes, in Washington, I guess.
Is it virtual?
Both. Virtual, it's hybrid. At least that's what Ed told me. I didn't check yet.
That's good. Yeah, I was invited to give a talk at another university yesterday, and I assumed it was virtual. And then they said, no, you can come if you want to. And it's a real shock. Meeting people.
So
for me as well.
Yeah, so the ASTMH, is that another conference? Is that what it is? Yeah.
It's the big one.
That's a tropical medicine conference, the American one. You also have a European one, but this one is the American variant. And the American one is every year. The European one is every 2 years.
Yeah.
I never managed to get to it when I was in Sydney because November is like a super busy month for everything. It always clashed with everything, but always wanted to go.
I went twice, and both times it was Washington, but they do alternate between the different cities.
Okay, but it's good there's a session there. That's very healthy.
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so that was I think it was the only thing I was tasked with. So we can go through updates. UCL, UCID, and Erasmus. I guess we can just have quick verbal updates. I was just talking to Dimitri about chemistry that he's doing. Dimitri, do you want to just summarize the molecules that are hopefully winging their way to Erasmus?
Yes, Matt. Hello, everyone. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, so just a short update on what I've been up to. So mainly preparing compounds for biological evaluation in Rotterdam this season. I can confirm that we have at the moment like 8 phenomenal molecules and 2 keroxime almost ready for dispatch. DM37, 38 are expansion on heterocycles based on DM7 potency results as previously mentioned, and I'm just finishing purification and characterization of those. The rest are mostly ready. So I was expecting ideally to send them like next week probably. And also taking note of that, I wanted to just reconfirm quickly, Wendy, about the deadlines. Has anything changed? Like, are we in a big hurry with this? Because previously you mentioned 1st of July, so I'm kind of like rushing with this as well. But of course, like there are several options of making like more molecules maybe, if we get like more time. But again, it depends on the timeline. Can you comment on this, please?
Yeah, so the summer we have at the moment is more a typical Dutch summer as last year. So it's relatively colder and it started a little bit later. So I assume that the winter and the fall also will be like the typical Dutch fall and winter. That means that we will not be able to go all the way into November for analyzing. So the sooner we get things done for in vitro testing, the better, because then we can evaluate in the larvae. It also depends, of course, on the amount of molecules which in the end will need to be evaluated in the larvae. If it's only 1, that will of course go quicker than when it's 17 or 18, because that was last year the big problem. We had to do 17 or 18 Fennery moles, I guess, and a lot of the pandemic box. We don't have to screen anything for the pandemic box now, and the COVID response box was disappointing, so we decided not to screen any of those molecules. So it will only be the Fennery moles. But I wouldn't stretch it beyond August. If you can make 1 or 2 molecules, that might be okay, but not if you are going to dispatch 50 new molecules in August. I don't think we will be able to manage to screen those in this season.
So
It's
do you
just
think
like,
so send it, so do you think probably we should, as a group, everyone who's made something, send it out around now?
Yeah, preferably, because then we can screen these all in one batch, which is always the most convenient. The in vitro screenings we are doing continuously at the moment, so it can go quickly. But when we do the in vitro, then we need to do the in vivo. And Ma is training in the model now. Mickey is still around, so he can help her with the evaluating of these compounds as well.
So preferably you would like to get them as soon as possible. That's the takeaway message, basically.
Yeah.
Is it specifically has to be before the 1st of July, or it can be like variation plus 2 several
Well,
days?
if it's a week later, that will also be okay, but don't stretch it all the way to August or something, because the summer holidays are coming as well.
Yeah, I'm actually going on holidays as well, so it's just a question of whether I just send everything that I have here, like 10 straight away, like say next week, or just try to maybe get like 1 or 2 more, maybe just in time. Yeah, okay, I'll make a decision on this, but I'll probably send it to you next week. I'll hope.
Okay.
Yeah, because all of them are ready. almost. Like I just have like this 38 to purify left. Everything else is basically ready almost. Yeah. I was also considering maybe getting more Keroxymes, but based on what we just talked minutes ago, maybe we should get like 2 at the moment and then decide on other options like for the future, probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it would be interesting maybe to make like dichloropyriflox, you know, take off those 2 chlorines, put hydrogen or something, but I don't know.
I think it's better to concentrate at the moment probably with this scaffold. So we were thinking of expanding on the alkyl chain from the perfenox, which is possible to do like with this one as well, because I have like the ketone precursor, but probably because based on the screen, we had the isopentyl group here, the alkyl group here in this molecule. So we probably should emphasize this as like the starting point, like for all variations at the moment. I have the extra CH2 group and this specific scaffold, but vary the R group, like the alkyl group.
Vary the actual oxime functionality on the oxygen. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I was assuming that the hit from the box was gonna have the O-methyloxime functionality, but it had a bigger chain.
Yeah, it was more potent.
So interesting. I would have reckoned it would probably just been definitely interesting to explore.
I think it's going to be interesting screen as well, because we're kind of expanding, like we have like 1, 2, at least 3 molecules based on the DM7. So we have like variations. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of results.
You also have the bicyclic compound I proposed off of DM7 as well a while back.
Are these have all got the MycetOS numbers?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
in the master list already.
Okay.
Wait, 37 and 38 are not in the master list yet, but I will add them. I'm just like finishing the characterization and stuff like that.
For diagrams like this, just generally speaking, when we're sharing things, it can help to have the MycetOS codes there, just to make sure we've got no ambiguity about which molecules we're talking about.
Yeah,
so for can draws and
like
pictures and stuff, it helps to just have the MycetOS codes in addition to the local codes. Okay, that's our UCL update.
Yeah, probably that's it for the UCL update.
Right. Thanks. Who wants to go next? You said Erasmus.
Yeah, I can go next. So just a very quick update. I'm gonna, since Kimberly is not here today, I can also just give a quick update on what what we've been doing with the SSP mycetoma as well. So from last time, we got a bunch of SSP first year students to help us make a lot of the series 2 compounds, a few different modifications. The program went really well, which was really, I was very glad to be a part of it. So like actually, not just making molecules, but actually teaching other students how to make these mycetoma molecules. I think it's quite a cool experience to have done that. And also thanks to obviously Wendy as well for giving them a bit of background and perspectives on what we do as well. I think it's a really valuable experience for the students and also for us as well to do that collaboration. So Kimberly has shipped the SSP students, so series 2 compounds. So I think there's about 13 of them, and she has a picture of that on GitHub that she just shared with us earlier today. In the shipment, there's also 13 compounds from my synthesis as well. So for my second batch, so mine is just going to be phenaramine analogs again. And I've got 13 of those, so about, I think, 26 in total. That's already gone to well, to Erasmus University, so that's great. And I am currently still working on the SAR. So I worked with Kimberly, and she helped me with kind of like the direction of how I can take this SAR further after I've already, put the structures and do a bit of the separation categorization, which is on GitHub. But she said it will be more helpful to start looking up each of these initial hits, which there were 4 plus DM7, which is Dimitri, the latest hit that's gone really well in vivo as well, to just slowly go through them, looking at each of the modification one by one. So say if there's 3 rings, for example, then I would go through individually each one of them and go through, say, each ring. If I modify it, then what's going to happen to them. So I'm going through those, but I'm going to focus on that more in July. So for the month of July, I haven't had a chance to look at that a lot this month, just because I have ethics application for my next part of my PhD, and it's just taken a long time to have to do that. But that's almost finished now. I can move on to looking at the SAR more, and also do some, particularly do some writing for that as well. So that's what I've done and what I'll be doing for this month. So hopefully a lot of writing, particularly for SAR as well. And I guess I've also talked to Alice and Peter, so my supervisors. I guess in the next 12 months, I'll be looking at 1 or 2 more batches of phenomenal analogs, pending my findings from the SAR. So it's going to be about probably 20 to 30 more compounds in the next 12 months that will send. That will be shipped as well, but that's for the further future. But immediately will be the some writing and analysis for the SAR.
Great. All right, thanks. Yeah, I just saw the post from Kimberly about the immunothiazole, so that's great. Also noticed that she was using ELN, the GitHub as a lab notebook, which is great. I hadn't spotted that she was doing that. I might take a look at how she's been managing that. It's kind of interesting experiment. I
think it's working really well. But there's one thing that we note is that GitHub is being bought by Microsoft. So the openness nature of it might change. It might affect how we store open source projects as well. But that's a bit towards the future. But that's just something to note. But I think from her experience, it's working quite well. She hasn't really. I don't think she has any problem with that so far.
Yeah, if there's any hint of the way GitHub operates changing because of that acquisition, which happened about a year ago, I think. So nothing's changed yet.
Yeah.
But if there's any hint of any changes, then yeah, hit the panic button and we need to get everything off there. I think a lot of people around the world really, really value the sort of default open thing that GitHub does. It's free to use if everything you do is publicly available, and you pay for secrecy, essentially. And if that starts changing, then I think a lot of people will get very upset, including us. And then we might have to think of an alternative. But there's such a large community of people who value open. I mean, not scientists, but coders who value open, that it is a very strong community. So hopefully they won't do anything to screw that up. All right, great. Wendy, did you want to update us on Erasmus?
So yesterday, Wilson submitted the pandemic box manuscript to PLOS, where we, of course, we already have all the data on GitHub, but he needed to write it down for his PhD as well. We also went further with the Fennery mold paper, because he needs to include it in his thesis as well. All the analyses we did so far are in there. The parts which are missing are actually the chemistry part, so how the molecules are made. So maybe if Hang and Dimitri could add that on the manuscript, which is on GitHub, it's a Google Docs file, I guess. That would be great. In the lab, Ma worked further with Phosphorospora senegalensis, so the other causative agent of eumycetoma. we're aiming to test the hit leads, so the series against Falciparum senegalensis, and she now tested several of them, and we're gathering that together to make an overview which series do have activity against this species of mycetoma, which ones do not, because that might also in the future be important for decision making, because the diagnosis and the identification of the causative agent for mycetoma are poor. So if they see a black grain, they assume it's Madurella mycetomatis or Falciparum senegalensis, depends on where you are, but they don't do further identification usually. But if we identify drugs which are active against only one of the two, then that might be an issue when you start treatment down the road, of course. So that's something we would like to include in the screening approach. That's why Ma is also preparing a Galeria model for this causative agent so that we could test in vivo also against both. Now we can only test in vitro against both. So that's a little bit the update from our hand. Yeah, the aim is still to finish the Fennery moles by the end of this year so that we could finish the manuscript also by the end of the year so that we can get something out, an update on the Fennery moles.
That's great. I had missed that issue you started about the paper, so that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm just adding a note here to say that, yes, it would be good now if we could add in some of the chemistry detail. Lots of the procedures will be the same as the ones that are already published, but of course the data for the individual compounds will be new and should be added in. And we just need to work on proving that molecules that were biologically evaluated in the manuscript have some adequate assessment of purity in there, so that we can be clear that the molecules were assessed when pure. And that can sometimes take time if someone needs to, repurify something or retest something. So yes, Dimitri and Hung, if you have data to hand for the molecules that are going to be in the manuscript, it would be great if we could assemble those. Fantastic. Thanks for starting that. That's really good.
Yeah, and also with regards to that, the MycetOS codes have been changed several times. I will run all through the figures at some point to check if everything is correct, because I saw on GitHub that there's still debate going on what the MycetOS code should look like. So I guess they will be changed again, and for me to go over the figures to change all the labels over and over again. Yeah, I'd rather do that at the end.
The changes should be a minimum. So it's only if there are conflicts, if they need to be resolved, and then one molecule needs to be switched over. But 95% of the molecules, if once they're named, will stay that way.
Yeah, so
I just wanted to clarify something about that list. So basically, the numbers will not change anymore. So, for example, in the past, what I did is if we have a duplicate, then I would have to change the whole sequence. But now it's getting like too complicated. So now, if there is a problem, we just get rid of that number, but do not change the others anymore. So they will stay. They will stay permanent. That's what I just wanted to confirm. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
So there shouldn't be any problems with that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and I've also put a note to remind everyone who's putting MyOS code in the future to just double check duplicates. So just search for smashing. So I put a yellow highlighted text with a comment in there with a guide just to, if we're not sure, just double check that. So it tells like the naming convention and what happens when there's clashes happening in there. So we won't have any more, hopefully, any more new duplicates or any new problem with the MyOS code in the future. And so hopefully it will be really to like one last change that we might need to make.
There was only one problem with one duplicate, which appears to be two separate entries in the Epichem list. And there's no supplementary information, so I'm not sure why they put that as separate entries. And I still don't know how should we manage that, like in our list as well, like two different MyOS codes, but the structures are basically one-to-one, like they're the same. So it's kind of like if we give them separate MyOS codes, then it's like a conflict again, because it's like a duplicate another. So I'm not sure. And retesting batches, how should we deal with in terms of MyOS coding system as well? That's something that's not resolved. That's not been resolved.
Yeah, so I'm tempted to just say if you have the same batch tested twice, just put it into 2 line. I feel like that's just a convenient way of doing it. And in terms of that conspicuous duplicates, then yeah, I'm not sure about that either.
For multiple testings in the malaria spreadsheet, we have extra columns for things that were tested. For the same batch, things that were tested multiple times, but for different batches, we have different rows, right? I mean, is that the way it's working out? So if we have a single batch that's evaluated multiple times, we could always have an extra column in there. Is that what you mean, Hung?
As in like a new same batch tested twice is going to have 2 rows. So first row is test the first one, and the second row with all of the other data will be the second one. Because I think like if you're adding another column, then wouldn't you have to add like all of the little columns behind it, which there are so many different tested at the back?
Well, you just insert one. So we had this problem with the malaria project because we had people evaluating molecules in Dundee and then in other places. And so we had a column added in for the different assays that were run from different places. And that meant that we could then, for one row, we could then easily average the potencies, Yeah. And so we had a column which was the average potency across several places for a single batch of molecule. So I don't really mind how we do that. It makes sense to me to have the rows as batches and to have columns as assays, but
I guess this is more of a logistical problem, maybe for perhaps Wendy, because there's multiple like different biological tests. So I don't know how complicated that's going to make your work, Wendy.
So adding an extra row is not a problem. Adding extra columns, then it makes it more difficult to analyze, of course.
Why is that?
Well, if you select or rank, and sometimes it's done in one, only one is in duplicate, then you have only one value in that row. Or in that column, sorry.
But if you did an evaluation and then of a batch, and that's imagine there's one column which is for primary evaluation, and then you could have another column for retest or something. And if you just insert it, it shouldn't screw up the sheet, I don't think. I guess.
Oh, as in like you mean like adding a column and then have that on a new column, but like everything else will be still the same. I think that's what I meant as well. I just meant like I just meant like have it on a separate row, but I mean you can also add a column in it, which is fine.
Okay. I mean if you have the batch code on the extreme left of the spreadsheet, right, that's the one thing. Then everything associated with that batch is then you've just looked to the right.
Yes, but on the other hand, you don't know. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's the same batch, but I assume that if I retest something, I will do it in vitro, but not all the way in vivo, because that's so much work to do the in vivo analysis. I'm not going to retest the same batch, the same compound in vivo.
No, that's all right.
In vitro, that's not that much of an issue if we add one extra assay, but in vivo, that's really an issue.
Yeah, and I think Kimberly is mentioning as well, she was also not really like for the idea of retesting all the time, like because she mentioned like we should really just do things really well the first time, and then that will be the result instead of like keep retesting. She was just mentioning that as well, because that's to her that's not something that we should be doing a lot. But like
but I guess some of the retests are things like if you have a control compound or something. So if we sent in a batch, if we sent in a batch now, let's say, and we added in a previously tested compound just to verify something, or if we have we got a strange result from a particular batch and we retest it to see if it's true, then you've got 2 in vitro evaluations of the same batch. And it seems to my mind that what you want is a row with the ID and then test 1, test 2, and so you can compare them. If you have another row for that molecule, I don't know, it seems like a column needs a header saying retest, and most of the spreadsheet will be blank for that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So
you know,
so it's kind of still say the test 1, which is the initial test say based on line 1, then the same batch, but test 2 is going to be on the next column down 1 row, and then it's just the other test. Is that how it works? Sorry,
I'd say on the same row. I'd keep it on the same row. But my view would be to try and keep the batch on the same row, and every data point you get is on the same row. And you can have a column that says, you know, retest, and 95% of the spreadsheet is blank in that column. Doesn't matter. And then you average them, and then that's fine. I mean, that's I think that's the way things. I think that's probably easiest, because you don't then have lots of duplicate rows of the same batch being tested again, which I think would be confusing.
Is there actually an example of that in the GitHub for malaria project?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you go to the master list for OSM, you'll see it. Yeah, I mean, you
I'll
enormous number of columns, but that's okay because no one reads it. You know, you just you extract the data you need. Yeah, I mean, you know, as an example, I think there's probably like 10 molecules or something where the plasma protein binding has been measured in OSM, but there are like 700 rows, and no one cares that most of that column is blank. You know. Alrighty.
So just
okay.
one thing with the manuscript writing as well. So because I'm looking at doing the SAR and also analysis, so perhaps writing that. So that's for obviously for my PhD thesis. But I think, and Kimberly also think that if that might contribute to our manuscript for this paper as well, if we can have like a direction in like which kind of structure works for our biological activity, which doesn't work, I think that could also go into the paper as well. So do you think that would be good if I can get, finish that, and then let's see how relevant that is to the paper, so we can put that in?
Any and all thoughts on SAR? Yeah.
So yes, I'm just gonna focus on that for the next couple of weeks and get some writing out of that for our next paper and also for my thesis as well.
Yeah, because our idea with writing the manuscript is that you already get an overview, so that you don't have to go back and forth, and you can already see what what has been done and what the questions are still left. It could also, for Wilson, it could be of benefit because at some point he needs to hand in his thesis. So he then can take the manuscript in its form where it's at that time, polish it a little bit up to put in his thesis. So he doesn't necessarily have to wait till the whole manuscript is finished. Because yeah, that would be harsh because not only his PhD is part of this thesis, also yours and Dimitri, I guess. So, and you two probably have a little bit more time left in your PhD trajectory than Wilson has. So that was our idea. The rest of his publications are published or submitted for publication. So it's allowed to have, in the Dutch system, to have one which is in preparation or submitted or whatever. But the other ones need to be at least submitted or published. So that was the aim for this one. But in order to keep track and keep the overview, it would be good to add the chemistry in as well. I added anything, all the things I did with the log-D, etc. All those analyses, I added them in as well. And if you want to duplicate them in other systems, that's also fine. But at least the data is already there.
Yes, I will work to have that up in the next week. So I'll hopefully get that done by our next meeting. I'll give you guys an update on that as well.
Same
I guess
for me.
one of the things about the paper is to make sense of the SAR, and that will involve the new compounds in this paper, firstly, and then a comparison with what was in the previous paper. And that is a big part of the intellectual input that we need in this manuscript. So yeah, I mean, Hung, Dimitri, everybody, thoughts that people have about making sense of the new data versus the old paper are absolutely central. And allows us to have a thesis, right, of what we're saying is important.
And it's an ongoing project, of course, because the molecules just sent or going to be sent in 1 or 2 weeks' time, they will be included in the final version, of course, but we don't have the data yet. So that means that all those analyses, which are already there in the background, of course, and for which the master files are already there, we only have to upload the new data points which come from this season. So it will only be refined. It will not, I don't hope that with these molecules, the analysis or the outcome will completely change. I don't expect that, but maybe it makes the association stronger.
All right, great. According to the agenda, I think we're done a little bit early, which is fine. We've had updates from everybody. I think we've covered everything. Was there any other business we haven't talked about? All right, great.
Not from me.
Yeah, pretty much everything. I guess the main thing is testing newly synthesized molecules, getting chemistry written up, getting molecules shipped in time so that we can finalize the data for the paper.
Yeah.
Great stuff. All right, well, as chair, temporary chair, I'll say that's been a very useful meeting, and thanks everyone for turning up.
Thank you. See
Okay.
everybody.
All right.
See you, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.